What is up, everyone? What is up? Thank you so much for checking out the show. I do appreciate it. Please make sure that you hit the like button on your way in. My man Garrett is already here, here for the internet's daily dose of women crashing out. It's comedy now and free. Yeah, so we're gonna this one is gonna be a little bit more intellectual than that, but yeah, we will see some videos of some ladies crashing out, and it's really bad. It's really bad. And I really want to answer or try to uh offer an opinion as to what I think is going on. And there's been a lot of talk lately, if you watch and follow this particular space, about ladies and men, working better together, and what's happened since our departure and demise of traditional families and roles and genders and all the gender roles, etc. And that's been an interesting phenomenon for me. And I just don't know if we're handling it very well. If you're here in the building, make sure you say hello. Hello to you, Rhonda. She's saying good morning, afternoon, Dr. L in chat. Hit that like button. That's most importantly is that you hit that like button. Thank you guys so much for joining. I am still in the middle of painting. I'm right now, I'm in my downstairs, so I'm painting my upstairs. And I gotta say, I'm not a painter. I'm not doing a very good job. So I got to do a bunch of recoats, and I'm also kind of being a perfectionist too. I want it to look really, really nice and professional and stuff. And it's so, yeah, y'all spiritual warriors out there, y'all pray for me. L, bad as in the minor inconvenience or Titanic women just struck the iceberg relationships. Um, I think an iceberg struck the Titanic, that type of thing. Whether the iceberg struck the Titanic or the Titanic struck the iceberg, I guess that's yeah, that's debatable. But I just think that in this day and time that we're just not getting along to any great degree. And there's a doubling and tripling down on it. And what I want to start this off with is that a lot more ladies are noticing. A lot of ladies are noticing that there is a problem here. There is a problem here. So I want to you talking about prime the videos, Garrett? I want to show some videos here. I want to show some videos here to kind of get us in the warm up. And one of this I talked about before. This is by a lady whose name is Corey Clark. And this is a video. This is her doing a talk at USC, I believe. This is this lady doing a talk at USC. And I'm going to start it off kind of, I don't know, an eighth of the way through or whatever. I don't know. And she talks about why this is relevant. Now, what this video is talking about is it goes from warriors to it's called from warriors to warriors. The rise of women in science and society. Now, not that it is inherently negative for ladies to be moving up through the corporate sphere or entering into the sciences or into getting more academic positions. But what I'm going to demonstrate, and what these ladies, it's not me just saying it, what these ladies are demonstrating is that this is having deleterious, negative effects on the sciences and what's going on in psychology and what's going on in academia. That's the issue. That is the issue. Uh, well, the iceberg was just floating there. Definitely the Titanic's fault. The iceberg was sleeping in the iceberg's field, not expect anything to happen to it that night. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing I'm having a problem with, man. I primed it, and then I went to the store. I had to buy something. I came back, and then I started painting over it. Now I don't know if I did not give it enough time to dry. And I'm talking about the ceiling right now. And I start painting it, and it starts peeling off. I'm like, oh my God. So now I got to do it all over again. So I just I just put a coat up. I'm gonna do this, wait another 2 hours, wait another hour or so, and then go back and do another coat. So I'm hoping it's gonna turn out good. But yes, you're absolutely right. I did use kills first. Yes, that was my prime. That was my primer first. So I don't know. What's up, high vibe? What's up? All right. So again, getting back to this, institutions, including academia, were typically created by men for men. Well, some men, not all men, but some men. So what she's saying is that once these institutions, this is a lady Corey Clark, has once these institutions were taken over, and these ladies' language, not mine, taken over by women, they've changed the entirety of the dynamic. of what goes on, how research is done, and what considers valid, who they should have as speakers, things like that. So this is a really important. So I'm going to start this off. We're just going to play a little bit of this. I'm going to speed it up a little bit here. So again, we're just kind of get a feel for what I think is going on here. So we're going to start this off at it says why this is relevant. So what she's talking about and what she's answering the question to is, why is it relevant that ladies are taking over, not just taking over, but how they're changing what we know as science, what we know as psychology, what we know as law, the application of law when you go to criminal justice field or in the field of law, whether you become a lawyer, right? Why is this relevant? So here's this lady giving a talk at USC.
In them first for a long time, including academia. This is true across countries. Women joined academia much later. They weren't allowed to participate, but nonetheless, they weren't there. And so the status quo in many institutions should reflect male preferences and priorities. So in academia, we do have these large merit-based hierarchies. We have direct competition for publications, for grants, for awards, for jobs. These are
then that's important what she's saying here, right? So it was the status quo, male preferences and values. I would just say objective, but these are her words, not mine. She's saying male preferences and values, and what were those values? Merit-based hierarchy, direct competition for status. She's going to get into this, but converse that with what a lot of ladies want. Well, we just liked her. She fits in better with this group. Things along those lines, and that isn't boding well for society, for academia, for the military, for other spheres. These I'm playing ladies here because this is not just men bashing or whatever. This is what they're saying. Let me see here. Painting, hope it's an acceptable color. My ceiling is white and my background is gonna be burgundy. You're gonna see my eventually when I get this all done, my background is gonna be burgundy because I'm moving upstairs. So whenever I get that done. Let's see here. White women took over academia. I think it's important to make that distinction. Well, I'm trying to be neutral about that, but it's not lost on me. Although Anita just sent me something today about there's a group of lawyers, or I think black lawyers. Who did she send me? Black lawyers or black psychologists. Anita just sent me something today about black psychologists, and so she wants me to talk about that and how they're continuing to take over the psychological field. So, this is a problem. You want black men to go to therapy. They're not going to go if they're going to feel beat down and bashed. They want men to go to therapy overall. They're not going to come if they're going to feel to go to therapy. Women are now in barbershops, smoke lounges, etc. Where on earth can men retreat, and how to now where there's just men? Well, that's what they don't want. They don't want it to be just you. They want to be there. And this is what I think is going to be very important to the crashing out portion that we're going to get into. I wanted to kind of lay this groundwork as to how this is happening and why a lot of ladies are freaking out and suffering from more mental illness like never before.
Are more male-oriented values. However, very recently, very recently, only in the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years, women have started to dominate academia. This top graph, so these are both the US, but similar patterns are true in other Western countries. The top one is PhDs. And so you can see starting around, 2009-ish, I think, women started to earn the majority of PhDs. The bottom graph is faculty at higher education institutions. And I think around 2019.
And a big thing is, what type of degrees are they getting their stuff in? And that's going to be becoming relevant, important a little bit later. Unless I have a a master's degree in psychology, social science degree and all that kind of stuff. So, so I'm not one to talk, but what are these people getting degrees in? So
women officially also are the majority of professors. This shift, women being a very small minority of participants in an institution to being the majority participants in an institution, have some predictable consequences. These predictable consequences that I'll talk about are increased preference for equity over merit-based hierarchies,
look at this, increased equity over merit-based hierarchy, increased harm avoidance. So guys are like, I don't care about your feelings. What are the facts? Right? and they're not doing an increased ostracism, right? We're going to start separating people. What's up, Mr. Stu? Thanks for joining.
Harm avoidance and increased ostracism as like the preferred strategy for dealing with conflict. Okay, so first I'm going to go over some like anecdotes that demonstrate these things have happened, and then I'll get into some data from various scholars who've looked at actual self-reports of men and women and what their values are, what their stated values are. Okay, equity over merit-based hierarchy. Many universities eliminated standardized testing. This is a measure of merit in order to make sure we're putting the top students at the top schools and in the top programs. A lot of universities decided to get rid of those. We have a problem with grade inflation, which is true K through 12, but also in colleges as well. What is the, Luana? The average GPA, what is it these days? 3.9. I hope you're lying. It's 3.9? Oh, good God. Okay. Yeah, grade inflation. And then you might be like, well, these are just like the most talented kids ever. But actually they're
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you right now, they're not. I've been teaching this and looking at their papers. They can't read. They don't read. They don't read books. They don't want to read anything. They're AIing everything. They don't know how to make an argument. I had a student just the other day was complaining about the book that we chose to read for this particular class. It was about race and policing. She didn't like the book because it made her feel bad. This is a student. So I had to answer an email to the boss. Like, come on, man. Are we really doing this? But this is really what's going on out here. Now I'm standing my ground as a male professor, but imagine somebody else, another instructor. Not all women, obviously. We're not going to say all, but imagine a female instructor would say, maybe we ought to, think about this and, assuage the students' feelings and all this kind of stuff. We're here for an education. And race and police, we got to look at data, stats, statistics. We got to be able to formulate opinion about, what needs to change. They don't like it because it makes them feel bad. This is what's going on.
Performing terribly on the standardized testing. So this 3.9 GPA, I don't think is smartest kids ever. I think it's equal distribution of the stickers. Everybody gets an A. The introduction of diversity, equity, and inclusion committees. Conveniently, they put the word equity right in there. So preference for equity. Hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on these programs across the US. Increased preference for harm avoidance. Many universities have started putting trigger warnings on books that had been taught for decades. Now the students can't handle them and they have to they're too psychologically upsetting for students and they need these trigger warnings.
It's absolutely true. To read a book. Crazy.
Introduction of safe spaces, often targeted at groups that are perceived as vulnerable and in need of this extra protection. The introduction of anonymous reporting systems at schools where anybody can report anybody for saying anything and then an investigation will happen. This is all trying to minimize potential risks and potential harms. Increased incidences of scholars being targeted for their teaching and research. If you read through these cases, the vast majority of them seem to have something to do with professors said something that could be perceived as harmful and especially perceived as harmful to groups that are perceived as vulnerable. I made this slide before Ivan's talk, so maybe this is a bad piece of evidence. I agree that the vast majority of retractions are for legitimate reasons like errors and fraud. Nonetheless, it's very obvious that many retracted papers are retracted on the basis of harm concerns about the conclusions and especially that they could harm vulnerable groups. The introduction of explicit policies that are harm-based policies, indicating that papers might be rejected or retracted on the basis of harm concerns, and again, usually to groups perceived as vulnerable. Ostracism as the conflict resolution strategy, that is the cancel culture strategy. When men get into a conflict or a man does something wrong, his status takes a hit, he gets kicked down the hierarchy, he has to prove himself and earn his way back up, but he's not kicked out of the group altogether because we can't just afford to be kicking people out left and right when, maximally large groups are more competitive. We want to make sure we're taking advantage of everybody's skills. In contrast, for women, the solution would be, if you've shown me that you're a risky person, you're a person who's posing risks of harm to others. I don't give a shit what you can contribute or do in the future. You're out forever and you're never welcome back. That is a more female-oriented strategy, and it is also the strategy that we see in cancel culture. Okay, how you guys doing? Okay. I will be at the end of this. So actually this is a good time to get to the data, because lest your tendency is to say women don't really have these values and priorities. Well, they will tell you to your face that they do. If you talk to them, if you interview them, if you survey them, they will tell you that they do have these different priorities. So there have been several surveys. I'm just going to present, I don't know, like maybe 5 of them. This is a 2017 YouGov survey. They found that a majority of men felt that colleges should not protect students from offensive ideas. They supported controversial speakers' right to speak on campus. They reported that colleges should not disinvite speakers if students threaten violent protest, and they opposed confidential reporting systems for offensive comments.
Let's take a look at this. A majority of men, right? This is how men think. Colleges should not protect students from offensive ideas, right? The ideas may be offensive, but you got to be able to. Somebody wrote in here, be able to think critically, right? You got to be able to think critically, right? So, okay, the idea may be offensive, but at least have a retort or a response to it, right? Supported controversial speakers' right to speak on campus. Think about this guy who was just, offed back in September. Might not have liked what he said, but he has the right to say it. And if you don't like it, create a better argument. That's the generally the male perspective about how we do this. Colleges should not disinvite speakers, right? So they invite someone, word gets out, oh, there's a big tizzy about it. Then they say, okay, we got to cancel your invitation, right? If students threaten violent protest. Should not, right? So they should, what I think what they should do is they should, beef up security. But again, the free exchange of ideas is important, right? Oppose confidential reporting systems for offensive comments, right? You have the right under the law to confront your accusers. Now, this is not the law, only if you get arrested. That's what I mean by the law. So if you get arrested, you have the right to confront your accusers, but they got these confidential reporting systems in colleges where they could just report you for anything. I'm against that too, right? Who said this? When did I say that? Who's saying I said this, right? You should have the right to be able to confront again your accusers. For all, majority of women held the opposite views.
For all of those, the majority of women felt the opposite. A 2018 Knight Foundation survey of college students found that a majority of men felt that protecting free speech is more important than promoting an inclusive society, and that it's never acceptable to shout down speakers. For both of those, the majority of women held the opposite views. So again, these are both about minimizing harms.
Okay, so I just want to kind of give a little bit of a taste of that. So this is just another lady. She's done some work, and I think she's the name of her book. I think she has a book, and it's called "From Warriors," right? And she goes through this about how she came up with that particular title. Warriors being women were worried about their progeny, their kids. So they sat around in small groups, and they had to make sure that everybody in their group, the group of women, talking about back on the plains of Africa, and very small inclusive societies and all that, hunter-gatherer societies, that when they were doing that type of thing, that they were they had to worry about who was around them, going to protect them, who would harm their children, things like that. And so now they changed from that to warriors, and they want to go out into the world and act like men, and they're bringing that worrying culture with them into the world where they want to move about like men. So this is the adjustment. So you can go over there, watch that. The full video there is From Warriors to Warriors: The Rise of Women in Society, Science and Society, by Corey Clark, right? All right, so that's that one. I just want to paint a little bit of a picture there. All right, let's see. Remove that here. All right. All right. I want to put this on the screen here. All right, so this one is so I've typed in feminization, as you can see from the chat, or in the bar there, right? So we're going to play this one, Helen Andrews, Overcoming the Feminization of Culture. This is by Nat Khan. It's a national conservatism type of thing. take for that what you will. But if you scroll down through here, I played this before. This is by Quillette, The Feminization of Academia, explained by behavioral scientists Bo Weingard and Corey Clark. So again, this is kind of more of the same, but I just want to show I played this one before. I think that is Corey Clark, actually. I think that's Corey Clark. And this is this lady again that we're going to play. There's a revolution happening you've never heard of. It's called the Great Feminization. And this is Helen Andrews again. So if you type this in, you can see a bunch of different stuff in here. So this Helen Andrews lady is getting around, and here is the particular, actually, no, we're going to do this. Yeah, here's the particular talk that she's going to give, and we'll play this right now.
Today's advent of AI.
All right, let me start this from the beginning here. Make this big. Y'all hit the like button. Make sure you hit the like button. Yeah, it may not be just be academia, but society itself. And this is what this lady here is going to talk about. Now, obviously, this is from the national conservatism. So, you know, watch this with a grain of salt, but it is something that's going on here. Let's see. Everyone welcome. Yeah. Basically, women came into academia and mothered the students. Yeah, that's exactly what they've done. Hit the like button. Let's see. Women soccer warriors, pro athletes got embarrassed by a bunch of children. Yeah, well, that's the physical. That's the physical. We know that they're not. This is not a negative thing. They just can't compete with the boys, right? They just can't. You know, 8th graders could beat a lot of these professional teams. You know. All right, here we go. This is Helen Andrews, Overcoming Feminization of Culture.
Once wrote a blog post describing all of the revolutions he's seen in the course of his lifetime, starting with the moon landing when he was a little boy and going up chronologically to today's advent of AI. And there were only 7 revolutions on this list because this was only the greatest and most earth-shaking ones. And right there, between the fall of communism and the invention of the internet, was something called the Great Feminization. That is not a phrase that a lot of Americans know, but future historians may well rank it as having greater importance than almost any other revolution on that list. The Great Feminization is very easy to define. It refers to the increasing representation of women in all of the institutions of our society. But as simple as it is to define, it's very difficult for those of us on the other side of that revolution to fully grasp its significance. The first thing that most people fail to understand about it is how unprecedented it is in human history. There have been many societies that have been feminist to one degree or another, in which women have been queens and owned businesses and held positions of authority that commanded the respect of men. But there has never been a society in which women hold as much political power as they do today. Think of all of the parliaments that have ever existed, every legislature in every country in every century. None of them has been, as ours is, 1/3 female. The idea of a female chief of police would have seemed very strange even to many early feminists. And yet today, the police department is led by a woman in the largest city in America and in the city in which we are now standing. Law schools today are majority female. Law firm associates are majority female. Medical schools are majority female. Women earn a majority of BAs and PhDs. College faculty are majority female. Women are 46% of the managers in the United States, and the white-collar workforce overall, workers with college degrees, a majority of them are women. These are, in many cases, very recent developments, the tipping point having occurred only in the last 5 to 10 years. And that is the other common misconception about the Great Feminization. People tend to think of feminism as something that occurred back in the 1970s, but it took several decades to go from token representation to approximate gender parity. The first woman on the Supreme Court was appointed in 1981, and in that year, women were 5% of the judges in America. Today, there are, of course, 4 women on the court, 1 justice away from a female majority, and women are 30% of the judges in America, 40% of the judges in the state of California, and 63% of the judges appointed by President Joe Biden. So from
Now, I don't think she mentions this, but this is another reason why these guys are crashing out. We're talking about women, but a lot of times a lot of white males are crashing out about this too. You know, it's not just about the immigrants, but you know, women are taking over, right? So they're just mad at everyone. Right, a lot of these, you know, white nationalists, racists, and all that kind of stuff, right? They're crashing out big time, right? So they not only think that they're losing their jobs and the immigrants, but the women are taking over. They're chiefs of police and all these politicians and white collar workers, right? So this is another part of their crash out.
the first woman on the court to a likely female majority on the Supreme Court is probably going to be a span of about 50 years. And the exact same trajectory over the same timeline can be seen in many other professions. There was a pioneering generation in the 1970s where a woman was often the only female reporter in her newsroom or the only female professor in her department, and then increasing female representation through the 80s and 90s until a healthy female representation of about 20 to 30% by the turn of the century. And today, 25 years later, in many of these fields, they are now 40% female or 50-50 gender equal. And the pendulum may not be done swinging yet. As feminized as we are, we may get more feminized still. Look at the example of the profession of psychology. As recently as 25 years ago, psychology was a predominantly male profession, up to 70% male. Today, the youngest cohort of psychologists just joining the profession, 20% male. Men have evacuated the profession of psychology. And it's easy to understand why. It's because psychology has become feminized. As women increased their representation in the profession, they reoriented the field to be more friendly to their ideas and preferences, to be about caring and empathy and non-judgmentalism. So a man who...
So that's the issue. It's not that just women are taking over, but they're changing the issues of how we do research and science. It's about empathy and compassion rather than the facts. And that is being seen as problematic.
Wanted to become a psychologist because he liked judging other people, would naturally choose a different profession. The same thing has occurred in literary fiction. Some of you may have read in the last 12 months one of several articles in the New York Times about how men don't read novels anymore. And the explanation why, which is very obvious to me, even if it's not obvious to the New York Times, is that the publishing industry is overwhelmingly female, almost 80% female. So men do still like to read novels. They just don't like to read the kinds of novels that today's publishing industry produces. Some fields are more susceptible to feminization than others. There's very little you can do to feminize the field of math or engineering. But as women join a field in greater numbers, we should expect that any field that can be feminized will be, and the dynamic will play out exactly as it has in psychology. It may be that a 50-50 gender split is not a stable equilibrium. I have referred several times so far to feminization without defining what that means. I'll have a lot to say about it in just a moment, but if you want to put it in a single sentence, you could say that feminization equals wokeness. Everything you think of as wokeness is simply an epiphenomenon of demographic feminization. Think about all the...
Now here I would have a little bit of a problem with that, just wokeness, because obviously as a Black man, I'm concerned about, what's going on a racial aspect of it. So I take a little bit of an issue with that.
Things that wokeness means, valuing empathy over rationality, safety over risk, conformity and cohesion over competition and hierarchy. All of these things are privileging the feminine over the masculine.
That definition, obviously, I obviously do not have an issue with, as long as we keep it right there.
So if you have ever wondered why wokeness appeared out of nowhere when it did, that is my hypothesis, that all of the institutions that began admitting women in the 1970s eventually got enough women that they were able to reorient them.
Right. I agree with the Erod. It's not all wokeness is not feminism. I definitely agree with that. And now when it comes to race and history, right. So that's where I start to draw the line at. Exactly right there, right? Yeah, we're on the same page there.
For example, women are consistently less supportive of free speech than men in surveys asking which is more important, protecting free speech or preserving an inclusive society. Approximately 2/3 of men say free speech and approximately 2/3 of women say inclusive society. In moral reasoning, the traditional way of phrasing the difference between men and women is to say that women have an ethics of caring and men have an ethics of justice. In making a moral judgment, men will ask, what are the rules and what are the facts? Women tend to be more interested in context and relationships. So let's apply that to wokeness. When James Damore wrote his famous, or I should say notorious memo for Google, arguing that female underrepresentation in the hard sciences might not be the result of bias and prejudice, no one even attempted to argue that he was wrong on the facts. The reason that he was fired was because the things he had written might make his female coworkers feel bad. Or consider the Kavanaugh hearings. The masculine position was to say that maybe something bad happened to you, but if you do not have evidence, then we can't allow you to ruin a man's life and career over it. The feminine position was to say, how can you talk about rules of evidence? Can't you see she's crying? Now, to be clear, many women were revolted by the way the Kavanaugh hearings played out. In fact, the very best book on the Kavanaugh hearings was written by two women, Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino.
I did watch the Kavanaugh hearings, and I was like, what is going on here? I just downloaded this book, so I'm anxious to read it.
But a political system in which men predominate will tend to operate according to rules of facts and objectivity, and one in which women predominate will tend to operate by the rules of emotions and subjective facts.
And think about what you will about Bill Cosby in that situation, but the man should not have been convicted. He should not have been convicted. Unfortunately, he was all overturned. But I mean, this is what's going on here.
Even if there are individual men and women who fall on the opposite side of those camps. There's a lot more that could be said about sex differences and wokeness, but I'll skip ahead to the controversial part of my argument. Because believe it or not, nothing I've said so far has been particularly controversial. So far, I have only made two claims. One, men and women are different. And two, as institutions become more female, they change in predictable ways according to those differences. I think even most people on the left would agree with that. Feminization is a great example of what Michael Anton calls the celebration parallax, which is a fancy term for anything where you're only allowed to notice something if you think it's a good thing. There are literally...
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Guys can go over there to watch the rest of that. It's only like about 8 minutes left. But I wanted to set this up to say, to argue her point was that men and women are different. And I think that the next video that I'm going to play is really going to highlight, what's happening now that we are separated and we're not coming together, family formations, ladies a lot of times in these workplace environments trying to be the warriors, and not saying that they can't do it, but I am saying that there seems to be, this is arguable, I understand that, a psychological toll that is being played when they get out of certain elements and try to embark on different things, right? So again, you guys can go over there, watch the full context of their argument, as well as the other videos that I highlighted in the feminization thing, right? So this last one, the book is, I just downloaded to Audible here. Hold on. The book is Justice on Trial, the Kavanaugh Confirmation and the Future of the Supreme Court. That's the name of the book. It's by two ladies, Molly Hemingway and Carrie Servino. Justice on Trial, the Kavanaugh Confirmation and the Future of the Supreme Court. So I guess that they're breaking down, what happened during that trial. So I'm anxious to read from these ladies' perspectives about that, because again, as a guy watching this, I'm like, okay, where's this evidence at? You had people saying what? Okay, this happened years ago. You don't have any messages? How come? I'm asking all these legal questions from my own, obviously from my police training. I'm like, okay, where's the evidence? Where's the proof of this? Because if we're thinking, from a criminal justice perspective, we're going to make an arrest about this. We got to have some proof. We got to have some evidence. And there was none of that. And so, like, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm like, this is crazy. Why is this guy being confronted with this? So that's the book. Doc Thunder, I was catching the end of your show there. Sorry, I couldn't. I wanted to jump on the panel. I couldn't do it. Welcome. I know a lot of us in this sector have been talking about this. I think you'll find this video I'm about to play next pretty interesting. Men want a statute of limitations for accusations of raping. I don't know. I don't think I would say that. I don't think that. I certainly wouldn't want that. I mean, again, rape happens to men too, and it happens to young boys. And I wouldn't. We just want justice. So, let's see here. Let's see. Welcome, Indigo Flow. What's going on? All right. So that's that particular video. It's been covered by a number of people. I think T.S. Johnson did it, covered it the other day. But the next video I think is going to be really good. And someone, Anita, actually sent this to me. So we're going to play this here. Let's see. What is this? Share screen, Psychobabble. What is this? No, that's not it. All right, let's see here. All right. All right, this is called The Rise of the Pathological Female. So here we'll see a bunch of videos. I know you guys want to tune into that. Tune in for that. Let's see. And men are the biggest victims of pair, and boys are the biggest victims of child molestation. Yeah, yeah. Don't forget to hit the like button. I know you brought that up in the last episode we were just watching there. So what is going on with this? What is going on? How come this is not playing? All right, so this is the lady, the rise of female, the rise of the pathological female, and this is by a lady. Her channel is called Psychobabble. That's why I named the title of this show. That it's her title, Psychobabble with Dr. Spear, and she is a psychiatrist. She's a psychiatrist somewhere in Europe, Zurich, Switzerland, I think. So yeah. So I did check her out. Make sure she's really legit, right? She has a Substack and all that kind of stuff. So again, Psychobabble with Dr. Spear, the rise of the pathological female. So she's gonna really go in on this. Just watched her video. Okay, cool. Yeah, they don't. You're absolutely right about that. All right, here we go.
Completely blind ourselves to the growing prevalence. We don't want to admit how easily certain temperaments go out of control. What happens when they're left untamed? What happens when excessively neurotic women are not taught to emotionally regulate? We're trained to think that women are so harmless. They're just, they're just innocent creatures, just full of good impulses. No, they can wreak havoc, and we're not doing anything to prevent them to spiral into pathology.
So she said left untamed. That was her words. Untamed. And I would argue, and I think a lot of other people have argued, Shahrazad Ali has said something close to this. Jordan Peterson has said something close to this. When these ladies aren't having kids and they don't have a man in their life to help to regulate them, then that's a negative thing. Now, is there a negative thing when men don't have women, when the men don't have families? Yes, they're more prone to violence, more prone to forming gangs, joining white supremacist groups, terrorist activities. Those are all different types of gangs. They are more prone to again just violent behavior, not regulating themselves. They don't have something to lose, right? So yeah, so there's an aspect to us that is missing, and when left unchecked, it can have drastic consequences for the rest of society. That would be the argument, right? So again, how do these ladies get left unchecked? That is something that we're going to explore right here.
That contribute to our poor mental health. I'm Hannah Spear. Today we're going to talk about pathological female behavior, the cluster B pathologies, because we are surrounded by the wreckage they cause.
I don't know what you want from me.
All over the internet, you can see viral videos of grown women throwing tantrums in public.
Okay, let go. You didn't let me get my moment, so I want to say my name is Carita Diano, and I'm graduating today.
And whenever I speak about this, people come out and they say, this is exactly my sister, my partner, my children. There's so many people suffering from this. And the irony is that the prevalence of all the different mental disorders is rising. We hear about it all the time. We're in a mental health crisis, but somehow the rise in cluster B pathologies that we feel all around us is not reflected in the research. Somehow, the official prevalence of cluster B has not been updated for 2 decades. The irony is that psychiatrists and psychologists are very quick to diagnose high-functioning individuals with mental health disorders, but they remain very reluctant to recognize cluster B conditions. And I'm going to explain now how exactly ideology clouds the roots of these dysfunctions and how.
So she's talking about, number one, notice what she said. She talked about ideology, how it's not being diagnosed. And that's why I played those other two videos about the feminization of academia and why that matters. And if the psychologists who are coming up are not willing to recognize or not willing to say that this is your behavior is problematic, then this is going to harm us all. That's why I prefaced those two videos with this particular one.
It's possible that we avoid discovering the true prevalence of cluster B pathologies. And I will focus on the female presentations here, because the male version, the antisocial, is widely recognized, widely studied, and these individuals you will find prosecuted and incarcerated. But the female coded form, it's far more likely to be excused and misinterpreted and framed as other types of mental disorders, because we hesitate to be judgmental about female behavior. So that's why.
So when you take a look at this, right? So this is why, in this space, guys talk about a lot of times the septum ring theory, right? You stay away from don't date women with a bunch of septum rings or tattoos. And by the way, she's going to get to this. I'm just bringing it up now. This is why we talk about this type of thing, right? Ladies with a bunch of tattoos, piercings, septum ring theory, right? Stay away from these type of women because they have something going on upstairs that is problematic and nobody's checking it.
Because we hesitate to be judgmental about female behavior. So that's why I'll talk about women here. And that doesn't mean there aren't men with cluster B disorders. It's that that's not the problem I want to discuss. First, very quickly, personality disorders are conditions classified in cluster A, B, and C. We can talk about clusters A and C another time. These are inflexible patterns of thinking and behavior that lead to significant impairment, dysfunction in all areas of your life. The cluster B personality disorders, so that's borderline, histrionic, narcissism, and antisocial, they are categorized by erratic, dramatic behavior, manipulation, impulsivity, very high negative emotion. The histrionics are
and even that she's going to get into that, like that histrionic, what this lady is doing right here, right? She's obviously filming herself, but not only are you crashing out and having this mental breakdown, if it's even real because she's filming it, but the histrionics of doing this for attention. So there's multiple issues going on here. You're having a breakdown. You're going to film it to get sympathy, right? So this is all about what happens when there's no taming. These are her words. No taming. No, I would say no male presence. No one to tell you to knock it off. Whether it's a father, an uncle, or someone, right? If you got ladies in particular, your psychologist, your therapist, whatever, is telling you it's okay. It's okay to. It's not okay. It's not okay when you're taking a wheel and throwing into people. It's not okay to crash out at graduation parties. It's not okay to crash out in the airports. It's not okay to do that. And somebody has to be there to tell you to knock this nonsense off.
They're seeking admiration. They want to be the center of attention all the time.
Why don't you just take the picture on your camera roll and keep it there?
No, because you feel when you take a picture and you look at it, you feel wow, like this would be good for my Instagram, or I would post it.
And so then you can imagine how social media feeds into that. And these are adaptive traits that are formed, and the boundaries between
they're adaptive traits. What would this world be like? What would this situation be like if we were not dealing with if we didn't have social media? Let me put it that way. If we didn't have social media, how would we be operating? How would we be getting down? Would these issues, these mental health crises, be as profound if we didn't have social media? Would they be as profound if ladies were having children in their 20s rather than waiting to later on in life? Would they be as profound if they were not being forced to be in the workforce as much as they are due to inflation and capitalism and everything else that we can blame? Would they?
These are very porous. So that's why I like to say cluster B conditions or cluster B pathologies, because no one is just one thing. And to illustrate what this is for you, I found a video. This went viral this year. It's a 32-year-old woman who had a complete borderline meltdown on a plane and had to be taken off in zip ties. You can see this is not just drunken irritability. She had alcohol, but that just amplifies this type of behavior. That doesn't cause all of this. So you see the contempt. She wants to establish dominance, and she's entitled. She expects everyone to accommodate her, and not the other way around. And now she proceeds to grab her seatmate's hair, and while still clutching it, she insists, "I'm not even touching her."
I'm not. I'm not even touching your hair, bitch.
You need to let go right now.
911.
You need to let go.
911.
You need to let go right now.
You can see how she smirks. There's pleasure in the chaos.
Over here. Fucking fat lady.
You need to let go right now. Let go over here.
You guys are already past the point of no return. You're already past the point of no return.
We see here it's not just impulsivity, but belief in causing another person discomfort and receiving attention from the opposite sex. And you see how she has males around her. They're usually very charismatic, attractive women who use that to get the attention they want from men.
Fat bitch. Hilarious. You can't even show your mouth because you're embarrassed.
And now she escalates. She taunts the victim with sexual insult. So your boyfriend's dick is 2 inches, and she's laughing while doing it. And her behavior is like, it's like a schoolyard bully. There's sadistic satisfaction in causing humiliation of the people around her.
You're using a lot of fancy words here, and I get it. I get it, right? She's got to come from a psychological perspective, but it's really just entitled, spoiled brats running around here. No one has, to High Vibes point there, I'm not going to put it on the screen here, no one has clocked this lady in her life. She's never been told no, gotten passing grades, probably the community where she's come from, an entitled life has led to this type of entitled behavior, and no one along the line has come in and said, knock it off. There's no consequences as far as being arrested, facing the same amount of jail time or prison time that a man would do if he was doing the same type of thing. All of that is playing into why these ladies are acting like they're acting. They're all crashing out because no one in their life has been able to stand, or not that they have not been able to, but no one has seemingly told them no, put their foot down, hold firm, held fast, and now they can't take it. Spoiled, entitled brats.
Can't see it because you're embarrassed. Shut the fuck up.
Who is the one?
You can see her smiling here. Pay attention to her face.
He's never gonna lay it again. Okay, I'm sorry, black guy. My boyfriend's black, so shut the fuck up. My boyfriend's fucking a black guy. My boyfriend's black. My boyfriend's black.
Now she's flaming, she's screaming, I can't breathe. And what comes next is very interesting. She shifts into victim mode, which is classic manipulative strategy. She weaponizes vulnerability to escape accountability. And it's not genuine distress. You feel it. If you look at her, you feel it doesn't elicit the same reaction in you as someone who's genuinely in distress. It's a tactic.
My boyfriend's a fucking black guy. You're joking.
Oh my God.
Shut the fuck up. 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 Yeah, of course.
She has 2 women and 2 big men around her. They all
ugly ass bitch. You're so fucking. You never got laid in your life. Your boyfriend's dick is like 2 inches big. It's embarrassing. I'm so sorry about your boyfriend. You're corny as fuck. Nobody's letting me go. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Okay. Let me go. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Shut the fuck up. I can't breathe. Fuck.
And she's kicking and screaming. She's very violent, and while smirking. So you can see how this is causing her. You can tell that this is not her first encounter with being violent or being touched in a violent way. This is something that she can control.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. My person is black.
And now you see she changes tactics. So there's a man, he crouches down, he speaks slowly to her, and she tries to elicit sympathy from him. So she knows exactly how to handle males. And when that doesn't work, she goes back right away to kicking and shouting and screaming profanities. This pivot is like from a desperate child to violent aggressor. It's not disorganized. This is patterned. She's done this before, and it reveals a style of maneuvering others through emotional coercion. If cry if it works, and rage if it doesn't.
And look at this too, right? So she's being escorted by police, but she's in this. They're treating it as a medical type of situation. Right? She's not walking out in handcuffs. She's restrained, obviously, on the gurney, but they're treating us more, I would say, just from the optics of this, that they're treating this more of a mental health crisis versus a criminal aspect. And that's, I don't know if they would treat a man like that.
You see, she's wheeled out. So this illustrates the core features of borderline personality disorder, which is emotional instability, impulsive behavior, manipulation, and harm to yourself and to others. And so why do I say that this is the female form of antisocial personality disorder? This is, evolutionary psychologists have established that females tend to cloak their aggression in subtler forms, like moral outrage.
How dare you?
Because they're physically more
There's your girl there. So I think that this is something I think that we're struggling with. She's calling this professional here is calling this, one of the cluster B disorders, but this is just bad parenting. It's bad parenting, bad society, societal enabling behaviors. That's what I attribute this to. No one has been mentioned numerous times in the chat here. I'm not going to put this on. I should have had this on the screen. Why no one has ever laid hand on this woman? Not that violence is the way always, but somebody's got to get in your face and say, knock it off. A parent, a guardian, your boss, knock it off. Get in your square. Sometimes that's necessary. I think a male would have been arrested first. Yeah, he would have been beaten, assaulted, punched in the face. He would have been treated completely different. And so, we're trying to understand, why these ladies are allowed to crash out and like this. So a lot of it is due to the feminization of the culture, not just of academia, but this is bleeding through to other realms, and where they're treating these ladies in a different way than they would treat the men.
Vulnerable, and they have an existential need to keep to preserve social cohesion. And now you see that moral outrage is tied to progressive causes. So like, I'm such a good person, I'm all about justice and compassion, so I'm going to pour paint over this Van Gogh painting because I'm just so good and so moral. You see the same on
I'm so good and so moral. I can't even believe I had that Van Gogh painting out in the open like that. I went to go see it here in Connecticut. It was covered by glass. So I don't understand why they would even do that. Y'all make sure you hit the like button. Where's my like button at? Hit the like button.
University campuses, in riots. You see the traits, the borderline and histrionic traits play out there with this.
And again, the theory is that these ladies are acting in this particular way because a lot of them don't have children and don't have husbands. I don't know. I don't think she's ever going to say this, but this is a theory that is being put forward, is that they had kids at home. Just like we said, if men had kids and families at home, they would go home after work, be less likely to get drunk and all this kind of stuff, right? Less likely to engage in all these different type of negative behaviors that we know are problematic from a male perspective. But these ladies are protesting, they're throwing, smearing stuff, but these are their maternal instincts to protect something. Their maternal instincts to protect something, and because they don't have children at home to protect, they're acting out in this crazy type of way, protesting everything, standing up for all these different individuals' rights, right? Adopting a bunch of cats and all over the place, right? This is the theory. So what is going on here? Nobody wants kids because of swatting. Okay.
The rapid shifts of emotion. You see them going from one moment they're a tearful victim, and the next moment they're a violent aggressor shouting in your face, sometimes while crying. And of course, you also see the narcissism, how they present themselves as a sort of moral authorities over issues they know nothing about. And a very interesting thing, how they are so interested in women's oppression in the West, and talk about that at length, while showing absolutely no sympathy for how women are treated in the regimes they defend. So they cloak their own aggression while exhibiting grandiosity, lack of empathy, and massive entitlement. And of course, like,
I never thought about it, but she's absolutely right. I hardly ever hear any of these groups really going on about female mutilation. What is it? FMG, female mutilation, whatever that is, F something. Anyway, so I hardly ever hear them talking about that type of thing, which is the problem, which is horrible.
I mentioned before, you see the histrionic traits all over social media. You see there was excellent example of this. You had a woman named Natalie Reynolds. She manipulated a homeless woman to jump into a lake and to film it and post it on TikTok. And she was then subsequently banned from TikTok. And then she went to the company's headquarters with the camera, did a tearful display, demanded reinstatement, showing absolutely no
Yes, thank you for that. Female genital mutilation, right? Yes, yes.
remorse for what she had done, only this very practiced I'm the victim. And of course the need for admiration, which is the histrionicism, and a complete refusal for refusing accountability.
This is crazy. Again, she's crashing out because her TikTok got banned. Somebody's filming it. Either she set up somebody to film it or she's doing it. It's up on TikTok. Again, doing it, right? This is the histrionics, doing everything for attention. Doing everything for attention. Supposedly the homeless is there to remind us not to become homeless. Yeah, why don't the homeless just get an apartment? Just get a job. Crazy. And that's sarcasm for anybody who doesn't know.
I think to understand why we're seeing a rise in these traits, because we need to understand how they develop. And because these aren't like other mental illnesses, they don't appear after an unpredictable or extraordinary event.
I agree. These are not mental illnesses. These are environmentally caused problems and issues. These are not psychological events. These are not neurological problems. These are not biological problems. They're society, first world problems. That's what they are.
They develop slowly over time. When in adolescence, the groundwork for these disorders are already laid. They are shaped by temperament, by attachment patterns, and environment. And
attachment pattern. That's parental. That's parents. Parents aren't there in the home. Who's raising these people? They got to work 2 jobs. And a lot of this is economy. I'm not trying to say, one way or another. I'm saying the economy is forcing ladies to be at the home. Who's watching the kids? There's attachment patterns. She's going to get into some deep stuff right here, right?
The core of this is a lack of consistent maternal presence, because it's no secret that at the root of these disorders are attachment needs that aren't fulfilled. And I saw this with the girls I treated. It was always about the mother. That was the relationship where they had the most wounds, and they would come Monday morning if they'd had a fight over the weekend with their mother, and they would have started a humongous tattoo, like things like this. They go pierce themselves after a fight with their mother. This is also why we see that you have a sibling who develops something like this and another sibling who doesn't, because the difference lies in the personality traits. The personality traits are 40 to 60% heritable. We're pretty much set with the personality that we develop. And depending on what kind of personality you have, you'd need a different kind of parenting. You have to adjust yourself as a parent to the personality of your child. So that's why you can see these variations in siblings. And humans are just as responsive to their environment as animals are. You see, in depending on your environment, you can down or up regulate these traits. So you see, for example, in high predation environments, birds will produce more anxious offspring than in a low predation environment. If you think about it, it's completely logical. And the same with us. And so I think this can really explain why we're seeing a slow drift into more maladaptive traits.
I'm not sure if that's true. I'm not a zoologist or what is it, ecologist, but I don't know if that's true. I think that sometimes in some environments, some animals have more babies, right? I think because they got to make up for those who might not survive.
Depending on your environment, you can down or up regulate these traits. So you see, for example, in high predation environments, birds will produce more anxious offspring than in a low predation environment. If you think about it, it's completely logical. And the same with us. And so,
anxious. I misinterpreted what she said. She said anxious. That's probably true. They probably are more anxious. Yeah.
So I think this can really explain why we're seeing a slow drift into more maladaptive traits, the traits that define personality disorders. And when I say traits, the best way to understand that is the 5-factor model. I know some people don't like it, but it is, we don't have a lot of good research in psychology, but this is one of them. It catered cross-culturally. It's very good research. And they describe traits along 5 dimensions. We've talked about this before. It's neuroticism, extroversion, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and openness. And under these traits lie a deeper system. Alarms, we have threat detection, reward seeking, bonding and affiliation, and control, and need to regulate everything. And these are evolutionary action systems that tell us when to flee, fight, when to attach to other people, and when to take risks. And all they do is want to guide us.
And all this is being disrupted by our modern conveniences, be it social media, be it the lack of 2 parents consistently being available. And this is all playing out. This is all playing out
Towards reproduction and survival. And so I think a very good way of thinking about personality disorders is when one or more of these systems are thrown into overdrive or left underdeveloped. And cluster B traits, they often reflect a hyperactive alarm system. So they're very sensitive to negative emotions. They're very afraid all the time, and a very underdeveloped affiliation system. So they have this extreme need for attachment. And so it's then obvious then when we outsource so much maternal presence, people with an excess of these action systems, the excess need for attachment and security, they will suffer more than others. And they learn.
There it is again. Here's another professional saying it. All these forces imprinting on your children makes them more anxious, makes them more their attachment styles go all haywire. They need one consistent person. That's their parent. And when you're outsourcing this type of thing, it's creating these monsters. And there's going to be more and more monsters created as we go along.
Very early in childhood, that only through extreme emotional displays will I get what I need to be calm. And then the next question is, when does this become a pathology? So over time, these maladaptive patterns will lead to them not being able to lead a normal life. And that is by definition a psychiatric pathology. You can imagine how vulnerable this diagnosis is to the bias of the observer. You know, for example, what are we to take as markers of impulsivity, for example, markers of an inability to think long term, right? It used to be that tattoos would be that.
Inability to think long term. I don't care about, as Garrett has been emailing me about, I don't care about the future of the race, future of the humanity. I want to have fun now. I don't care about kids. I want to live my life now. I can't think long term. Not all, obviously.
Or piercing your nose. If you go on TikTok, you know, all of these girls have pierced nose. And to me, I will take that as a marker of you not being able to think long term, but others won't. And today, these things are so normalized that we no longer see them as clinically relevant at all. And you know, a lot of therapists themselves have tattoos everywhere. And this is
And that's why I played the other video. The therapists themselves have tattoos and are dealing with the same thing. That's why I talked about the feminization. No one's there to tell you, you know, it was a certain way that it was before. And it's not about ladies so-called getting into these different fields, but they're changing what the rules were and how we engage and what's acceptable and not acceptable behavior. And this that we're seeing that's playing out before our own eyes is unacceptable behavior. That's the problem. It's not about women entering the certain places, but it's about an inability of those who are doing it to say, you know, enough is enough. Get yourself together. This is unacceptable. Think long term. You know, make some adjustments to your maladaptive behavior. That's the issue.
Problematic because they serve the same psychological function. You know, a tattoo is a way of coping with emotional pain in a physical way. It distracts from emotional pain. That's why they cut themselves. That's why, you know, they put their fingers down their throats to throw up their food. That's you know, that's why we have the self-harm element of the disorder. It comes from a place of not being able to know what to do with your emotional pain, so you turn to physical pain. insane. But if you are so ideologically biased that you refuse to see piercings and tattoos and other forms of, or taking lesbian dance theory as a degree, if you refuse
That is hilarious. Anybody in here have a lesbian dance theory degree? Anybody in here have that?
to see that as a dysfunctional long-term planning, of course a lot of women are going to go undiagnosed. So that's one element of why the prevalence rate isn't officially recognized. Another is the ideological gymnastics that researchers do around this topic.
Ideological gymnastics. That's why I played that part. Let's rewind that a little bit here.
Other is the ideological gymnastics that researchers do around this topic. The most commonly cited prevalence rate they use, 5.9%, comes from this NESARC study, 2002. This is 2008, where they ignore people who are just below the threshold. They ignore those who have intermittent symptoms that still cause major dysfunction. They exclude overlapping symptoms with mood or substance issues. I mean, I don't think I've really seen any patients with this who don't turn to some substance abuse or another. And you can really make a good argument that substance issues are is central to cluster B. These interviews, they're done by lay people who aren't used to talking to borderliners or histrionics, so they very easily miss nuance, or they don't know how to recognize the patterns. And worst of all, they rely on lifetime recall of these people who are known for their lack of insights. We do have other studies which actually show a rise in these traits. The research of Jean Twenge, which I've talked about a lot here on the show, she reports rising narcissism among college students. And here's another study which found measurable rise in certain traits over just 5 years, particularly among female students.
Prevalence rates, trends of borderline personality disorder symptoms and self-injuries behaviors in college students from 2017 to 2021. I'm assuming this is increasing here. I'm assuming that.
Among college students. And here's another study which found measurable rise in certain traits over just 5 years, particularly among female students. Now
this is because they don't have anything better. They don't have anything better to do. They don't have kids. They're not thinking about kids. They're taking lesbian dance theory. They're taking ratchet feminism classes. That's a real class. They're taking these classes, right? And they're being told that they're victims. They're being told that they're negative. Everything's bad. And so they're just, pathologizing everything. These are not neurological, biological problems. These are first world issues. And they just can't seem to deal with it.
Choose to focus only on self-harm and alcohol abuse. And they specifically leave out common behaviors.
And that's why nobody likes the DSM-5. I don't know if what your statement there is true. I'm just going to take you at your word that histrionic is no longer considered a personality disorder in DSM. Probably not, but a lot of people just don't agree with DSM-5 because of it's nonsense. And again, this is the feminization theory that's going on here. That's not an issue because it's if everyone is doing it and no one is quote unquote suffering, that's the marker of a mental illness when people are suffering. But if everybody's doing everything for histrionics, right, putting on these displays on social media and everything, they got to take it down. But that's not the marker. But the marker is going out into society and being able to function and not having these maladaptive behaviors that we're talking about, right? What happens when you're told no? What happens when and if you get fired from a job? What happens when somebody tells you can't have a job with your pink hair and your septum ring? How are you dealing with it then? I got you, brother. I got you.
Behavioral markers like tattoos, piercings, and impulsivity. So this shows how easily psychiatric criteria bend with culture. So this last study shows two things: that these traits can increase over short period of time, so they can upregulate. And the other thing is that they show how easily they leave out key symptoms of the disorder. I mean, it's just ridiculous how they can just choose to leave out tattoos, piercings, and impulsivity. I mean, you do that if your intention is to obscure the true prevalence rate. The worst thing about this is that there is a push to erase the disorder, the diagnosis altogether. because of the judgment on female behavior. There's a recent
Because of the judgment, we don't like it. Making people feel bad. It's making people who feel bad feel even worse. We don't want to judge people because they're impulsive. We don't want to judge people because they're marking on their bodies. We don't want to judge people because of that. Okay, but then to crash out on airplanes and fighting with the police and marking up, valuable paintings. When is this going to be a problem?
Guardian article that illustrates exactly this. They're interviewing leading psychiatrists in the field, and they're openly proposing, advocating for replacing the borderline personality disorder diagnosis with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. And they justify this by citing studies showing that borderline is associated with childhood abuse and neglect more than any other personality disorder. Fine. They say the rate of child abuse in these disorders range from 30 to 90%, but they refuse to address this gap. It's a pretty big difference between 30 and 90%, and they just gloss over that completely. They show that there's an analysis of 97 studies where 71.1% of those diagnosed report at least one traumatic childhood event. But these are self-reports. They're self-reports of a group of people who have a skewed perception of reality, who are extremely emotionally volatile and prone to manipulate others. So this is all based on self-reports from those kind of people. And we have to, when you talk about this is called adverse child experiences. There's a report, and then there's a scale called adverse child experiences scale. 61% of Americans, they score positively on this scale. It's meant as a research tool to see, how we can apply preventive measures. It was never meant in a clinical sort of way. And if you've ever been bullied at school, you'll score on this. So it doesn't really prove anything at all. And I think the worst thing here is that they don't distinguish between perceived abuse and neglect and verified abuse and neglect. Another thing is that when borderline women say, when they say I've been abused, what they largely mean is psychological abuse. Many, many things can qualify as psychological abuse.
You told me no. You yelled at me. I've been psychologically abused. You looked at me funny.
Discipline can qualify as psychological abuse if it's told in a certain way. And it's very comfortable. It's very palatable to say that they have a trauma. I think absolutely they have a perceived trauma. If you need more from your parents than they gave you, you're gonna feel very negatively about your childhood. But when you say I have a trauma, that is automatically something that was done to you, and not something in your behavior, in your pattern, in your personality that you do again and again that leads to you not having a normal life. So it's much more palatable to say I have a trauma disorder than I have a borderline personality disorder. So of course, ideologically possessed.
This is right. Complex design. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. This is the issue. They don't like being yelled at. They don't like being talked to sternly. They don't like it. But again, I'm maintaining that if you do this when they're kids and get them used to that, not in a traumatizing way, not in a cruel way, but just set some boundaries, then we won't have these issues as adults. That's the problem.
Psychiatrists and psychologists are going to want to say that trauma broke this woman, rather than admit that she has problem with her emotional regulation, she has narcissistic entitlement, she has relational aggression, she's manipulative, but they have no hesitation in saying that about men. We've no problem saying he's so antisocial, he's a psychopath. We hear it all the time about men who are nowhere near that disorder. Now, these clinicians, they explicitly claim that borderline personality disorder is a gendered diagnosis and unfairly judge female behavior. They're right, they judge female behavior, but not unfairly. And they claim there's no symptom that a borderline personality disordered person has that a PTSD patient doesn't also have. And so this is how they just collapse the BPD diagnosis into a trauma category. And the sleight of hand is that they don't mention the traits that are unique to borderline personality disorder: identity disturbance, manipulation, impulsive.
You're absolutely right about that, Asia Monet. Kids aren't mine, not my problem. But a random adult spazzing out on me is my problem. And I've talked about this before for all those video game heads out there, right? So there's a game I played, God of War, right? And the 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 protagonist in that, Kratos, has a son, and the son is acting stupid, right? He needs to be disciplined. And Kratos' friend, I forget what his friend's name is, Mimir. Kratos' friend Mimir says, "Listen, we need to talk about your son." And Kratos says to him, "Well, he's my problem," or whatever, something like that. And then Mimir says, "If you don't get this boy under control, he's going to be everyone's problem." So that's where we're talking about this. If you don't get these kids under control, they're going to be everyone's problem, right? They're going to be the police's problem. You have to be housed somewhere. That's going to be a correction problem. That'll be your tax problem. They'll be fighting you on airplanes, fighting you at the park, fighting you at the grocery store. It's going to be everyone's problem. So you got to get these kids under control. And now these ladies out here are everyone's problem now. We all got to be concerned about this.
Self-harm, splitting, chronic emptiness, but these are fiendishly difficult to define and very easy to overlook, and they are often left completely to a clinician's subjective judgment. And what really concerns me is that when we reduce cluster B pathologies to mere trauma responses, we completely blind ourselves to the growing prevalence. We don't want to admit how easily certain temperaments go out of control. What happens when they're left untamed? What happens when excessively neurotic women are not taught to emotionally regulate? We're trained to think that women are so...
We got to rerun that again. These are her words, untamed. Untamed.
To the growing prevalence. We don't want to admit how easily certain temperaments go out of control. What happens when they're left untamed? What happens when excessively neurotic women are not taught to emotionally regulate? We're trained to think that women are so harmless. They're just, they're just innocent creatures, just full of good impulses. No, they can wreak havoc, and we're not doing anything to prevent them to spiral into pathology. So when we shift the focus from misbehavior to trauma, responsibility and accountability completely fades. And those are the things they already have trouble with. And what concerns me a lot is that when they then receive trauma therapy for their trauma, supposed trauma, then treatment will be about excavating presumed memories and sheltering them, rather than helping them learn to make better choices, learn to behave differently. And so now that we know all of...
Learn to behave differently. Thank you so much for this, Leon Henneking. Appreciate that, Doctor. I'll take a moment and look up Ellen Pence, The Wheel of Abuse of Power. Do I have this here? Let me get this like here. Oh yeah. The wheel of abuse or power and control wheel. Now think about what this weaponizing. Now think about how this is weaponized against men. I would certainly check that out. Let me check that out. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate that. $5. I really, really do. Thank you so much for that. Let's finish this up. I wasn't gonna play all this, but we'll finish this up here. Just a minute or less.
The question is, what's the antidote? What can we do? So if you've enjoyed this, if you found this interesting, follow me over to Substack, go and subscribe there, and then we'll go into that. Also, I hope you will turn... And also, I hope you will tune in on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll do a live access, a live video on this. You can ask all of your questions. If you had some, if you feel that I didn't cover anything, or you have questions about, I don't know, a relative, then I'll address that on the live video on Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you there. Have a nice day.
Let me see if I can pull up this wheel here. I can't. Is this about domestic violence? Is this about domestic violence? Let's see here. Let's try to put this on the screen here. Workplace. This is, I guess this is kind of, I'm surprised I've never seen this, quite honestly. Let me make this a little bit bigger here so you guys can see it. Appreciate that, Leon. Workplace bullying, power control wheel. Abuse is using coercion and threats, threatening or carrying out harm to targets, or making work unreasonably difficult, forcing workers to engage in illegal, unsafe, or dangerous work using sexual innuendo. This is all under abuse, using intimidation, making workers feel uncomfortable or afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying property. And this goes into sexual, putting workers down, making workers feel bad about themselves, name calling, making workers think they're crazy, playing mind games, humiliating workers, using isolation. I'm not going to read them all. Minimizing, denying blame, using others, using employee privilege, using economic abuse. And there's one too about, yeah, it's the same thing. For domestic violence, and it says the same thing. I'm not going to put it on the screen here, but it says use physical or sexual violence using coercion and threats. Well, maybe I will put it on the screen so I'm not, I'm not making this up here. Let's put this on the screen here. Healthcare, health, Cleveland Clinic. So anyway, so these are the power and control wheels: physical and sexual violence, emotional abuse, using isolation, minimizing, denying, blaming, using children, using male privilege, using economic abuse. So yeah, something seems like something I need to investigate a little bit more. But anyway, so that's what I want to talk about for today. I really appreciate her video. I was watching another video too of hers, so she's got some good stuff. That Psychobabble. You can go over to her Substack, and she did a video today that I was watching. I'm not going to play it, but I will put it on the screen here so you guys can go watch it if you want. Let's see. Why is my computer running slow? Close some of these tabs here. I appreciate y'all coming to hang out with a brother. But I wanted to talk about this because, as it has been mentioned, we would not get the same amount of grace had it been men doing this type of thing. We'd be arrested, dragged off of planes, all this type of thing, right? So share screen. So this is another good video. I'm not going to play it today, but really, really good video. It's called Feminization's Buzzwords, How Women's Studies Rewrote Reality. So consider going over there and watch that one. So it's this lady again, Psychobabble with Dr. Spear. So good video, I thought. So let's see, get to some unhinged and feral. You can't teach women's baby daddy. They became a whole problem as adults for everyone, for men, women, co-workers, neighbors, cashiers, you name it. Yeah. Listen, I mean, we all know that this is, a lot of these things are male focused. You're right about that, right? They're right about that. Yeah. Yep. Big discussions. Yes, big discussions. We're on for Sunday at 3:00, 3:30. I can't remember which time, but we're gonna have a great discussion there. I'm really looking forward to it. You asked me some good questions I had to really think about. So yeah, MGTOW PPBD are winning. What's her name again? Dr. Let me put it on the screen here. Let me put it on the screen. This is hers. So this is her, Dr. Hannah Spear. She's got a Substack and all that. Dr. Hannah Spear, MD, is a Norwegian psychiatrist with a degree in cognitive behavioral psychotherapy from the University of Zurich, where she now lives with her husband and 3 children. So she's married. In October 22, she launched her Psychobabble, the publication of podcasts that challenges postmodern influences in psychiatry with championing traditional values in mental health. She has been featured in the Federalist, Commentary Magazine, The American Spectator, and Mad in America. She has also appeared on the Jolly Heretic, Unslaved, and Disaffected podcasts, and frequently collaborates with Janice Flamingo on Tom Golden's Men Are Good. And she calls herself the anti-feminist psychiatrist. So if anybody wants to go check her out. But that few episodes I saw was pretty good. Pretty good. 3:30. Yes, 3:30. Yep. Dr. Dunbar, we're gonna have a great conversation. All right, that's it. I just want to kind of cover that. To talk about, what's going on with the, a lot of these ladies who are crashing out. And again, my theory is, it's not just mine, but other people have said it, but I certainly sign on to it 100%, is that a lot of ladies are we're living in a first world country. They don't know how to deal with the modernity that they have. They're not having children, and so they're crashing out. They don't have to grow up. They can be 35 years old and still think that they're too young to have kids, and all this kind of crazy stuff. So I think I was listening to Dr. Thunder earlier today, and if I'm not mistaken, right, Kendra G was saying she's 47 years old. This is her words, right? She's 47 years old, and she was talking about this, that, I don't sleep around because I might get pregnant. And I was painting, and I'm like, did she say? But I think she said, right. So you're still having this. You're 47. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's clearly not impossible, but I mean, is that still something you worry about at 47? I don't know if she's still, cycling and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like, I just think that there's this refusal to grow up, this Peter Pan syndrome that's going on with far too many people in our society. And when when it hits men, it's the same. But a lot of the times these ladies are just delusional in what they're thinking. So I don't know. Just crazy. Just crazy. Kendra G is delusional. Yeah. It's like why would you say that? I mean, first of all, you really should be taking care of you and protecting yourself if you're still sleeping around. So I don't know. Women can and have babies. Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible. I certainly get it that it's not impossible, but it's just interesting that would be a conversation, right? So she doesn't want to be married, and again, I think it's just a symptom of the time. We don't want to be married, we don't want to have kids, and this and that, but you're doing the things that'll make a baby. I don't know. It is likely she could, but that's not the reason. But that's not a reason to not sleep around. Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, y'all. Thank you so much. I want to finish painting. I was going to do this later on tonight. Actually, I was going to do it last night, but I was like, I'm tired. So, appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit the like button. I got a couple other shows, guys. Continue sending me some stuff in emails. I am behind on that, and that's it. You guys have a great rest of your day. Great weekend. I'll see you guys on Sunday with Dr. Dunbar. And yeah, exactly. Who said? Well, obviously not Kendra G. Obviously not Kendra G. So there are way too many ways for her not to have a baby. That was some BS. Yeah, it was crazy, right? Right, you were on the show, right? Indigo, right? That's what she said, right? 47 years old, she's don't sleep around because they don't have a baby. What? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I'll see y'all. Take care. Much love and peace.